All right. Check, 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 check. Hello. Check, 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 check. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Oh, there we go. Luke. Just kidding. I couldn't hear myself. Hey, listen, couple quick things. We are super glad to have you guys all here. And apparently, if you want to get back at your pastor at any point in time, you just come to Contenders. You play basketball with us afterwards. And then when you're frustrated, you can just throw the ball in his face and give him a nice shiner for the entire week, okay? So, Chris Carson, thank you very much. Chris Carson tore down a Shaq rebound and turned to throw it, and I was apparently in his way. So, threw it right off my face. So that was really fun. But hey, a couple quick things I want to talk to you guys about, like family meeting-wise, all right? Here's the first thing. Please don't forget, you can even do this right now while we're chatting real quick. Get your cell phones out. Hop on Facebook. Do a check-in. Okay, hit your little pin drop location thing. 1Mosaic will pop up probably right away. We're almost to cap 1,000 check-ins. And just remember, this is our way to, A, kind of market, because then thousands of people see that 100 of you were here this morning. That's a really cool way to just generate some free marketing. But we also, for every check-in, Leslie Keene keeps track of that, and we give a quarter to I-92 Ministry. So you do that. You let people know you're here. We also donate to I-92. So make sure you guys continue to do that. And then we have a cool opportunity, and I just want to chat with you guys for a minute about this. And so this is our living room feel, our living room conversation for a second. God has been bringing some beautiful people our way, and I love it on the heels of the last teaching that we did when we wrapped up Colossians, and we talked about the beauty in diversity, and that God's kingdom is very diverse. And so we have had, literally in just the last 3 or 4 months, a crew of special needs children that have been coming and been being a part of 1Mosaic, and it's absolutely beautiful. So one lady in particular, young lady, 16 years old, her name is Jasmine, will be joining us on the 30th. And Jasmine has been at Mosaic before, and her parents, Dave and Melissa, I met with them last week, and I want to do this out of respect for them. I don't think y'all necessarily need to do it. I know your heart. I know who you guys are. But they asked that we would just say something to our faith family, and we want to do that. Jasmine is autistic and has times where she gets a little loud, but they're really looking for a church community that would embrace their family and embrace Jasmine. And I said, I'm pretty sure you don't have to look any further. And it was really neat as we were walking around with Jasmine and how excited she was to be here. And when she walked out, Dave, her dad, said, "Jasmine, what do you think of your new church?" And she's like, "Woo!" Just so excited. So we're putting some teams together and some different things to help with these children. But we want Jasmine to sit in here. We want her to be able to worship. We want her to be able to hear the word. We want her parents to be in here and not be distracted and feel safe and welcomed. So I just want to say to you corporately, on the 30th when Jasmine's here, if we have some noises or whatever, just tune in, just listen. I know I'm riveting anyways. It's hard for you guys. You're always just so focused, right? But I told Melissa, yes, I would do that. I would make an announcement and just really welcome them. And we have a younger guy in our Word Warriors classroom right now. That's just been a really beautiful thing. Really, really cool. So that being said, if any of you have a special spot in your heart for these students and their families, would you just come talk to me or send me an email sometime? I kind of just feel like God is opening the door for us to be maybe that church in Lenawee County where we have some of those resources. We already do. We have some incredible people that are trained in that. They do that for their living. And what a beautiful opportunity to be the church, the full body, to look like the kingdom, and to allow those parents to come and not have to worry about their kiddos and their safety, and to know we have trained people who will love with them, sit with them, encourage them. So if you feel that tug in any way, please let me know, and we'll kind of see what God does and where he takes us in that journey, okay? So with all that being said, we're going to bring Kayla up. Tad had a lot to say last week about how long I get to preach. So it take 20 weeks to get through one book, right? Dan teaches for an hour and a half. So here's what I'm doing. My 12 minutes, I want you to know, my 12 minutes, I'm giving half of them to my wife. And when I get up here, there you go. Thank you. When I get up, I will finish in 6 minutes in my session. I have one sentence. I'm going to read. So, hey, will you guys put your hands together for this beautiful lady, Kayla Christ. Oh, you need your microphone. Holy cow. Come on. This is not in my time, Tad. This is not in my time. Should have had a microphone. That's my fault. There you go. You put this on. There you go. You put that on. This is fun. Everyone watch.
That video said they come on a Sunday morning for professional teachers.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's not.
This is perfect.
Got it?
Can you guys talk amongst yourselves? Talk about Haiti trip in January.
Yes.
Gabby.
Next Haiti trip. There we go. Now you're live, so don't say anything you're going to regret.
Okay.
Clip that on your other ear.
This is so awkward. I feel like I'm getting dressed in front of you guys. Weird.
Okay, watch your hand for
Thank
a
God
minute.
I'm not.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right.
Wow, I don't know where.
Just put it up here.
I don't know where to put
We're
this.
good.
Just hang on. Don't walk away or that's going to fall, okay? You got
Who
it?
wants
You
to
good?
pray this morning?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I nominate Jim Bennett and... Okay. Just a reminder, anytime that I teach, I almost always write and read. So think of this as like when you were a little kid and you went to story time. Just get cozy. And good morning. My prayer this week has been more of a question for God. I've been asking all week, Lord, what do you want to say at 1Mosaic Church? I have nothing, no wisdom, no original wisdom that I could pass on. So what does God want to hear or want to say? Repeatedly this week I've been whispering this prayer. And to be honest, I had a really hard time preparing for today because this message this morning is deeply personal. And typically I'd prefer to teach on something much more lighthearted. I'd like to make you laugh. Where Dan's very sensitive, I like to be very silly. But instead, the Spirit was just telling me, just really compelling me to convince you that God sees you, that He sees you today right where you are, that He hasn't turned His face from your fears or your hurt or the trial that you're in. And by the way, we're all in a trial, some type of adversity right now. He wants me to convince you that He is present, and I promise that this is true. So, God sees you. And today is a story. Like I said, it's not a neat and tidy 3-point sermon. So grab whatever in today's message is for you. Likely there's something that was specific to your story today. All right, let's pray. God, one of the gifts of a relationship with you is that you go before us. And Lord, this morning has been unusual, where baby girl just had a lot of needs, and I was just so reluctant to prepare, God, to share a story that a year later, God, I'm just really ready to put to rest and to move on to the next chapter in our family's life. But God, you have a very clear, specific message that you want these friends of mine to be convinced of, and that's that you see them. So God, do what you do, and I pray that you would speak to minds and hearts with lavish love this morning. And we pray this in your name. Amen. So each summer for my birthday, we pack up and we head to Grand Haven. This is a tradition we started a few years ago, and we go to a campground that's directly on Lake Michigan, and it's my very favorite place in this entire state. I love this place. There's spotty cell phone service, and so for a week, it's just us, maybe some great friends along for the ride, the amazing lake, ice cream, s'mores, and unscheduled time. This is my dream week. And so a year in advance, it's just set on the calendar, and this is what we do. Side note, this year, the year that this story takes place last year, some friends, Ryan and Joe, had come with us. And when God sees us, he sees all of it. He sees the past, the present, and the future. And he starts to make himself present in all three of those places, which is so awesome because we can't do that. We're limited to just right now, this minute, this moment. But God can transcend time. And so by lining this up that our dear friends Ryan and Joe would be with us, you'll see how God used that to be present. We needed these people at this particular time in history more than ever before. So that's what he does. He's past, present, and future. On our way to this sacred space last year, we ended up in the emergency room because our oldest son had an emergency appendectomy. Kind of routine thing, not such a big deal, but it had partially ruptured. He was discharged the next day with Tylenol and just a tiny scar above his belly button, which, by the way, he's particularly fond of his own belly button. So this was the only thing that caused tears. He was really sad about his new belly button. Other than that, the surgery was really routine and things went fine. And he was sore the next day, but the campground was a perfect place for him to rest and recover, and he had us all to himself, our full attention to just take care of him. So for 2 days, the surgery went well, and the third day, we were able to go to the beach, and although he was tired, everything seemed okay. The following day, however, Caden was even more tired, and this time he had a slight yellow color in his eyes and his skin that Daddy, for some reason, couldn't see, but to me, I was starting to get concerned, and that's always Dan's job, right? That's the husband's job, to say, no, everything's fine, and our job is always to worry. So later that afternoon, Caden wanted to show me his pee. Typical boy. They like to show you these kind of things. So he was excited because he had drank orange Gatorade earlier that afternoon, and he claimed that his pee was the exact same color as the Gatorade. So normally I would decline seeing his pee, but I was curious. So I took a peek, and his pee clearly had blood in it. The appendectomy doctors assured us that this was likely just blood from the surgery and that it was nothing to worry about. But the following day, Caden was so tired that he could barely speak. Our very, very active little boy was barely moving, and his skin was this really eerie jaundice. We headed for a small hospital just minutes away, and I thank God for the physician's assistant, Tracy, who was working that day. She loves God, she fears God, and we needed her. Immediately, yet calm with no panic, she started an IV. And she ordered some blood work and started asking us a lot of questions. She saw urgency that we weren't there yet. So my first clue that something was really wrong was when Tracy came back from the first blood draw and she said that Caden's numbers were wacky. Not necessarily a number that they throw around in the medical, or a word that they throw around in the medical community. So, but I wasn't super alarmed. She came back a little bit later, about 15 minutes later, and she started talking to us about an LDH level, which is a level that they read in your blood. And this is an indicator of how healthy your red blood cells are. The normal range of an LDH level is between 20 and 300, and this is a safe range. Anything higher than that would tell a doctor that your vital organs are in danger. Caden's LDH level was 6,280. The second blood test confirmed that Caden was in kidney failure and that his red blood cells were being destroyed faster than any could be created. Tracy explained that his life was in danger and we needed to be taken by ambulance to the Children's Hospital an hour away in Grand Rapids. I remember asking her just that practical mom question, should Dan go with me or should he stay at the campground with the other kids? And she said very firmly, your husband needs to go, and when you guys get there, there will be a team of doctors waiting for you. She went on to say that in Michigan, there had been a child who had survived this particular illness. And then she said, good luck, and ushered me onto the ambulance. My mind grabbed these words, survived and good luck. Why are we talking about survival? And what does it mean, good luck? So I knew that Caden was incredibly sick. And I would much rather tell you a joke, but the truth is I can't publicly explain to you what happened in the ambulance the hour from Grand Haven to Grand Rapids. And this was by far my darkest hour. Despite anything that I had ever gone through personally, this trumped it all, because this was our son. Tracy had encouraged me during this ambulance ride to research HUS, hemolytic uremic syndrome. And she wanted me to know where we were headed and some things to expect. But I couldn't do this. I was completely paralyzed with fear because a good friend of mine's daughter had died of AML leukemia. And I was afraid to Google this and to find out that we were headed in a similar direction as my friend. So my phone, that oftentimes feels like a friend, actually felt like a death sentence. So instead of Googling, I texted my childhood best friend that's also a all of the medical information I needed to know, but she did it in the most graceful way. She was literally representing God in a time that I needed God to be right there, present with me. So God, through one of his children, he saw me. And Janine stood in the gap between my humanness and my need for something that was greater than humanity. She literally got to represent God in this moment. She willingly represented God by telling me the harsh truth of his health, but with raw love and compassion. So this is the gift of Jesus community. And if you're not in Jesus community, can I tell you, find one today. Find an M group. Come to Bride. Come to Contenders. Maybe just ask the person next to you to have coffee. But start to develop a community, because, friends, this is the truth, is that there's a storm coming in your life. And it might be an awe-inspiring storm, like the kind you want to sit on your front porch and you just want to watch, and it's awesome. And if that's the storm that's coming, that's even sweeter if it's in community. But it could be the terrifying storm, the one that where you want to pull the shades and you want to stay in bed and you're just wishing for this storm to get over. And if that's the storm headed your way, it's also sweeter and it's more manageable in community. So if the word community feels like a stranger to you today, then I want to beg you to start developing some community and a team of people to get behind you, because the storm is on its way, I promise. Okay. So Janine became my sojourner, which, by the way, is a really great name for an M group. She was this person that would travel with me for the next 6 weeks on this wild ride that life was throwing us. And from this point on, she guided us through this medical mess every single day. God was using her to see us on this journey. So it's possible that Genesis 16, I'm sorry, bride girls, I know we talk about this all the time, but Genesis 16, Genesis 16, verse 13. And she cries out to God and she calls him, "You are the God that sees me." In her darkest moment, God finds her and he engages with her. He says things that only her heart would know. And when she responds, she calls him the God that sees me. I'm convinced that universally, our greatest need is to be seen. Your greatest need, the cashier, the waitress, your mailman, people are desperate to just know that they're not alone in this life. People are desperate to know, and universally we need to know that when our darkest hour does come, that someone else might be there, that we wouldn't be alone and that we would be seen. So Hagar doesn't call God the rescuer, the defender, the one who punishes Sarah, which might have been my what I would have called him. Instead, she expresses gratitude that God simply acknowledged her. That's what she's thankful for. The hour ride in the ambulance was, like I said, my darkest hour, and despite anything I'd gone through, this was the worst. But it didn't end there, and when we arrived at the hospital, there was a team of hematologists, cardiologists, neurologists, nephrologists, a whole bunch of other people, and they were all waiting for us in the room. They explained that Caden's illness was caused by the destruction of red blood cells, and that these shattered cells were going to continue to pile around his vital organs, shutting them down one at a time. And I don't know that we want to talk a ton about death this morning, but just one vital organ shuts down, you lose your life. So this was going to happen to multiple systems. And the worst part is there's no plan. There's nothing that they can do. There's no injection where they can just stop this process. This process has to stop itself. Social workers began to come into our room. That was a new experience for us. And they started to counsel us on the severity of Caden's health and where we were headed. Doctor after doctor, every 30 minutes around the clock, came with updates. And every single one, I would craft this really sweet but very direct sentence asking them, is Caden going to be okay? And over and over and over and over, they would say, it's hard to tell, or we're very concerned, or we're hoping for the best, but never would they tell me that he would be okay. The illness continued to destroy his blood, and on June 16th, Caden started to stutter. His Grandma Brown, had asked him what kind of cookies she could make for him, because that's what grandmas do. They make cookies when you're in kidney failure. So Caden responded. He was really excited about this, and he said, chocolate chicks. And Dan and I kind of looked at him like, seems like a weird time to joke around, Caden, but he tried again and again, and he could not articulate. And within a few moments, he couldn't say his name, and he couldn't say his birthday, and he stopped speaking completely, and he lost all function in his body. The doctors were asking him, can you raise your arm? And he couldn't raise his arm. Can you, anything? There was nothing. Can you wiggle your fingers? Nothing. And then this quickly trumps the ambulance ride, but right before our eyes, Caden's eyes rolled back in his head. I'd never seen anything like this before. I don't watch scary movies. We were losing Caden. So a whole team of people, I don't know who these people were, but just tons of people just rushed into the room, and they got Caden on some type of bed, and they took him down for a CT scan, and this was a wild, wild moment in history. So Dan and I followed behind him, and Dan was able to go into the CT, but I was pregnant, so I had to wait out in the hallway, and I just kind of fell to the floor. I'm not a super dramatic person, but there was a lot of drama. I just kind of fell to the floor, and I had my hands, my face in my hands, and I was just crying, and I was praying, because my baby was really, 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 really sick. So at this point, we knew that there were 3 vital systems that were shutting down. We knew his blood, we knew his kidneys, and now we knew that his neural system was compromised, and there's just nothing we can do. So I, like Hagar, was in despair, true, utter despair. But friends, I serve a God that sees. So I don't know her name. I don't know if she was an employee, a patient, a fellow mom. All I know is that there was this incredibly kind woman that came and sat next to me. I could probably recognize her voice, but I never saw her face. And in this horrible moment, I never spoke to her, but she acknowledged me, and she saw me, and God had sent her. And she comforted me, and she said words. I don't remember specifically what she said, but I remember that as she was speaking, it was what I needed to hear. So sometimes God makes himself known to us by the presence of mere mortals. It's very mysterious how he does this. It reminds me of when Jesus was tempted, and he had gone through all these trials, and then at the end of the trial, Matthew chapter 4 tells us that the angels came and attended him, and that's who this was. Just some angel had been sent to be with me. Side note, if you're in one of those tougher trials, can I encourage you to read Matthew chapter 4? Just to be reminded that you're not alone, that Jesus did this. and then the story ends well, and that the trial does end. So the God that sees us often uses the unexpected, some total stranger. That evening, a team of doctors met with us and delivered the devastating news that Caden had an ultra-rare blood disease. Ultra-rare meaning 300 documented cases in the world. They explained that only a blood transfusion could keep him alive because his original blood had been destroyed to the point it had almost no oxygen in it. So he needed a blood transfusion. So he did that without any hesitation. But then they explained that there was a medication that they used for a very specific type of brain cancer. So chemotherapy, basically. And this might sustain his life. They brought the medication, we'd never seen this before, but in hazmat suits. So kind of like, picture some aliens or some NASA people. They bring this in, they had all the lights off, and this bag of medicine was covered in a black bag because it was light sensitive, so it could not be exposed to light. I don't know what happens if it is exposed to light, but it couldn't be. And they wanted to put this in Caden's body. And we're not even like a big Tylenol family, so this was a difficult moment. This medicine could do one of two things. It could either help slow the disease and give the blood transfusions time to create new healthy red blood cells, or it could speed up the disease and we would start to say goodbye to Caden. Anybody ever seen The Matrix? This was the scene from The Matrix. This was that climatic scene where you have to choose the red or the blue pill. And you don't get to undo your choice, by the way. This was an awful place to be as his parents because the risk was literally life or death, and the choice was exclusively ours. We had waivers we had to sign, kind of like when you ride a roller coaster or zip line or something, but I think much riskier. So we chose to give him the medicine, and our only option now was to wait and to see how his body responded. Now, that night, I had to face the very real possibility that my baby might not make it through one more day. This was our first baby, and I had been very, very close to him since birth, and he may be dying. We didn't know. I had to ask myself how to mother him best if he is dying. Do I tell him and do I explain to him that he'll be meeting Jesus and help him walk into eternity? Or do I keep this a secret and let this illness lull him into sleep and never say goodbye? This was my dilemma. And even worse than that was facing the image of his very best friend and his Irish twin, Jackson. Anybody in this room love Jackson? Yes, we love Jackson. So the thought of Jackson was the hardest part for sure. Thank you. Tony the hero. So sweet. Doing your part, delivering Kleenexes. Sorry. So Jackson was the hardest part. I had to think about Jackson playing in the woods alone. These boys play in the woods every day. I had to picture what would it be like for him to, for them to never be together again. They were designed to do life side by side. God had that plan since birth. Their friendship is so sweet, and Jackson could never find a replacement for Caden. It's impossible. This image shattered my heart, and all of this pain and this sadness poured out in tears while I laid on Caden's chest. He was sleeping. He was, at this point, not able to stay awake a ton. You have to know that we chose Caden's name in high school, a full decade before he was born. We built a house with Caden in mind. We had a bedroom that we designed for him 7 years before the child entered the world. Caden had been a part of our story long before we met him. We prayed for this baby, and he was now a 7-year-old little boy. And I was completely broken for my son. But I serve a God that sees. So somehow, in the midst of my spirit being completely broken, God entered this particular moment. The tears never stopped, and I remember a distinct peace that came over me as I'm still wrestling. This is what moms do. We try to solve problems, and I'm trying to figure out, do I tell Caden how sick he is, or do I keep it a secret? Which one do I do? Do I talk to him about Jackson? Do I tell Jackson? I'm trying to solve all this stuff, and I'm crying. And then this peace just came into my heart. The administrator of Grace began reminding me that Caden was not mine to begin with. I've simply been entrusted to take care of him. The Spirit reminded me so gently that every day I've had him has been a gift, not something that I earned or I deserved. So if I'm not entitled to my son to begin with, then I'm also not entitled to tell God how long his life should be. In this moment, gratefulness started to flood my heart. In any place that I was feeling greedy or angry or devastated, there was a gratitude that I really can't explain. What had minutes earlier had felt like 7 short years now seemed like 7 long years that I got to be his mom. I was overwhelmed with thankfulness that I was chosen to be Caden's mother. My flesh, of course, still wanted to be greedy. I wanted Caden to respond to this medicine and to feel better the next day. But my spirit was so overwhelmed with thankfulness that God gave him to me. The loving God that saw Hagar saw me in this moment and sent the Spirit, the mysterious Spirit, to comfort me and to lead me. And it was incredibly painful, but so beautiful. So now, my posture had changed, and who is it that would receive such an awesome gift of a child, someone that's made in your image and looks like the person that you love? Who's going to question how long you get to have that gift for? So, the God that sees you, he will send the Spirit to meet you. The next 3 weeks were full of highs and lows. A lot of you remember you journeyed with us, and it was good day, good moment, bad moment. Does Caden have MRSA? I mean, it was just wild. And there was never a promise that Caden would recover. My constant prayer was, Lord, please let our son walk out of this hospital and equip us with strength to face whatever your will is. After a second blood transfusion, Caden started to improve, and the disease started to slow down, and we were, of course, so thankful. And on June 30th, our baby did walk out of that hospital. He had a portable IV and 6 medications and an in-home nurse, so we were going to start a new life together, but he was still in kidney failure, but he was leaving the hospital, and we were so, so glad. Caden's illness was incurable and would require an IV, a new IV, every other week to administer that same chemo med. And this was his forever future. 4 different tests and a team of doctors confirmed that this was his diagnosis. And possibly the most difficult part of our new normal was that he was incredibly, he was at high risk for contracting meningitis. And since he would live his whole life with a suppressed immune system from chemo, this would be life-threatening, and this was forever. All right, we're almost done. I mentioned that I was pregnant during this time, and on the morning that I began labor for our 4th child, I rode to the hospital really quiet, which is unusual for me. Right, babe? Although our 4th and final baby, this baby that I had just begged God for, was on his way, I was so, so sad about this. I couldn't imagine bringing something as wonderful as a newborn baby into our home that was so full of fear and uncertainty. The other 3 babies had come into balloons and Aunt Laura's cookies and all these wonderful things, and this baby was going to come into IVs and nurses and medication and just bad. So this was a terrible time for our family, and I grieved for the time of our sweet baby's birth. I longed for our old life, and I wanted my peaceful home, and I wanted to bring baby Jensen into a place of joy. But this was a private battle. This wasn't something I was sharing with my friends. Only Dan knew the depth of this sadness. But God sees us, and he sees the tiniest places in our heart. And God made himself known again. Because on July 11th, 1 year ago, we received a call from the state of Michigan that Caden's blood work had changed. and that they had found E. coli. Can we get like a woo, E. coli? It's like the best 5-letter word. E. coli had destroyed Caden's blood, and even though they had looked in every nook and cranny in his body and had teams of specialists looking for it, they could not find it. And I want you to hear this part. When the state of Michigan isn't known as a God-fearing organization, right? But here's what they said. They said the lab work changed. In other words, it wasn't there, and it's there now. So God is so, so good. E. coli had destroyed his blood, and this illness was 100% gone. He was completely healed. The genetic ultra-rare blood disease was no longer a part of our story, and it was instantaneous. This news, by the way, came just hours before Jensen was born. God saw that part of my heart that didn't want to bring this baby into a place of sadness and fear, and he did the impossible. Some might say that this is coincidence. We've had a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, we've had a few people that have said, oh, that's a neat coincidence, or it's not a coincidence. There's a God that sees our heart, and he knows the tiniest place in your life that you need him to show up. He knows the most hidden places in your story, and he knows the desires that you only whisper to him. God saw that I wasn't brave enough to pray for healing because I revere God so much, so I felt like that was audacious to ask him to heal my son. So instead, he whispered to the saints, literally thousands of saints, and asked them to pray prayers that I wasn't brave enough to pray. And while I was praying for strength and peace to accept our fate, the author wrote a lavish amount of mercy into our story. He did the impossible. But even better than healing Caden, he let us know through the whole journey that he saw us the whole time, that we were never alone. So we call last summer the double miracle because of both Caden's healing and because the gift of a baby, which is always a miracle. But friends, today the most important thing is that you know the primary miracle is that God, the same God that created the infinite universe, that he sees us. And he finds us in places through community and through the Spirit. He even sees our most hidden places. And I can't explain how the Creator, that's so large my mind can't comprehend it, can also be fiercely personal, but he is. This mystery is the majesty of God. How he can be so great and right in our story, right beside us. If I could explain this, then I would be God. And instead, I'm just a limited human. So isn't this mind-blowing, this truth, that God can transcend logic, that his magnitude can come into our microscopic lives, that the same God that saw Hagar can also see you. And I promise that he does. So your trial is real, but God is also real. And through his word, he will meet you. And through community or a song or creation, he will find you. And the Spirit will attend to you. And this is the last thing I want you to hear, is that your only job when the Spirit finds you and when God sees you, your only job, your only responsibility is to acknowledge him when he does. Okay. Bless God, friends. And thank you, God, for what you did for Caden. Can we have the worship team come up?